so we'll record it. Did you guys all get your email? Did everybody take a
Yes.
look at it? Okay, if
Yes.
you didn't, not a big deal. But we're gonna do another case study today. Um, and we're gonna do this a little differently because I'm trying to expose you guys to what things are gonna feel like when you're out in the field. So obviously we don't have a horse right in front of us at the moment. But we want to walk through and talk through how you would go about this scenario. This particular horse, she's a mare. She's 18 years old. She's a little appendix. She's tiny. Um, she's only, I think, like 15.1. So to me, that's tiny. So she's little. Um, she has Cushing's. It's very, very well managed most of the time. But she became laminitic a couple of months ago in her left front foot. Then about 2 months after that, she got laminitis in her right front as well. Um, she's declining rapidly, or she was. So what happened was the farrier went out, and with the vet present, they used radiographs to put the shoes on her. The shoes were set too far forward, and so it added significant amount of pressure. So she stopped wanting to walk at all. Like she wouldn't even walk. She's in a run. She would not leave her stall. She would take 2 or 3 steps to go to her water, turn her body, and that's it. No motivation, very painful, rocking back and hopping herself forward. Um, and so the vet the vet that did the shoes with the farrier, they set the shoes too far forward, which caused her even more pain, and then she wanted to walk even less. And so I went out to do body work just to try to offer a little bit of relief. They wanted me to do cryotherapy on her, and another vet was called back for a second opinion, and that vet did a venography. And a venography is where they inject a dye in, they tourniquet the leg and they inject a dye to see the blood flow through the hoof capsule and to make sure that blood flow is going through all of the veins and arteries around the coffin bone and the navicular bone and everything. She had additional rotation since the shoes were put on the left front. And then she looks like she was starting to founder on the hinds as well. Very little rotation on the hinds, but there is some laminitis there. Let's talk about what you would do for this horse, how you would go about addressing a situation like this when there's this much discomfort, a lot of compensatory patterns going on, and some comorbidities. That's what it's called. When they have multiple things going on in their body, it's called comorbidities. And so between her Cushing's and the laminitis, which has now become founder in the front, um, let's walk through the thought process of what's safe to do, what we should avoid, and what we need to communicate to the vets and to the horse owner. What are your immediate thoughts on precautions?
On percussions, do you mean?
Like, what would make you be cautious about
Caution,
working with this
not
horse?
percussion. Okay.
Precautions.
Well, do you think there's something up with the shoes?
Absolutely. Like they've been removed
Yeah.
at this point. So,
Okay.
and they were reset. They're glue-ons. She can't handle the nails in her feet, and so they're glue-ons, and they're quite the contraption. Like they have the big plastic piece that goes across the front of the hoof capsule, and she's bolted together.
You would want to avoid working on her, like anywhere close to her front feet where she has laminitis, correct?
Ideally, yep. Why?
It's a great question, Chris.
Anybody have venture a guess?
Would it be because of the inflammation there and you don't want that to spread?
It's the increase of blood flow. And so with laminitis, especially, so even cryotherapy, which is normally highly indicated for laminitic cases, because this horse also has Cushing's, she cannot receive any kind of cryotherapy. She can do leg wraps, but nothing on the feet. And the leg wraps don't quite get cold enough. And the reason why we would be very cautious about any kind of massage, cryotherapy, PEMF, even in this situation, is the vasodilation and the increase of blood flow to the feet. She is already cushingoid, and the feet are already suffering inflammation because of whatever set off the episode. However, even though her Cushing's is managed, she's on such a restricted sugar diet, like low sugar diet. If those sugars got to her feet by increased blood flow, it could increase the inflammation and then ultimately cause the founder to become worse instead of better. And she's at a critical tipping point of, is she going to make it or not? So from my perspective, as far as working on the legs, anywhere from the knees or the hocks down, I would just avoid that altogether with this horse at this stage until the vet gave the okay. Does that make sense on that part?
Yeah.
What is
So-
the prognosis? What does everyone think?
Nobody's really
Yes.
talking about it, but they've given her some hope. They had not had much hope. And then, are you guys familiar with A2? And I wrote it down and now my brain is forgetting it's in the email. I think it's the Alpha 2 EQ. It is an injectable solution that is normally just used in joints to bring down inflammation. And they went ahead and did that around the tendons and in the joints of the feet on all four. So I haven't heard yet if that has provided relief yet. That just occurred on Monday of last week. So today is day 8. So we won't probably know if that has a benefit for another couple of days for her. It's a slow acting one, so it takes a few days to work. She was nerve blocked, so she was perfectly happy to walk around while she was nerve blocked. But so this is, you guys are going to run into cases like this where there's a bunch of different comorbidities going on in the body, and understanding what those even if you don't know it, we have Google, guys. Like, we have access. If you're not familiar with the condition, Google it and then think through the process of what massage benefits provide, which, you know, provides relaxation, it improves stability, it increases blood flow and lymphatic flow. If increasing blood flow and lymphatic flow is contraindicated because of those comorbidities, then we have to start backing off and thinking of, well, what can we do here? So when you think about this horse, and I wish I had a video of her trying to walk, but she basically would like set her front feet way out in front of her, rock back, and then leap forward and plant both feet. She could not walk independently. So she's sort of hopping, which is also very painful. So when you think about that body mechanics, what do you think the compensatory patterns might be? Where could we provide her the most relief with the least amount of complications? I'm going to see if I can find a little video for you here. I think I have one.
I think she'd be really rigid through her whole back, because when you're trying to like sit back and try to keep the weight off your front end, you're going to be really tight in your entire back and through your hind end. I mean, in your shoulders.
Yeah.
I mean, everything.
Exactly. Like her whole thoracic sling feels like concrete, and her back has really hollowed out because in order to do that leap forward, she has to put her head way up in the air. So she's completely lordotic and inverted through her back. And that's making her even more uncomfortable. It's pulling her pelvis forward and down. So the idea of her sitting on her haunches and which is how she has to walk, is increasingly getting more uncomfortable for her. Does that make sense?
Mm.
Okay, so we can
Would
very
crani-
safely, what's that?
Would craniosacral massage be helpful for her for as comfort?
It probably not at this stage. Cranial sacral therapy, while it's super, super gentle, it can be very, very intense. And as uncomfortable as she already is, it could significantly make things worse. So until she was stable, I would not do that. I would focus on essentially like comfort care and working through compensatory patterns to keep her as comfortable as possible without removing the compensation. Because if we removed all the compensation, she's starting at ground zero, and that could be even more painful, or she could hurt herself somehow, some other way. So in this case, we would focus mostly on trying to keep the muscles that are overworked from compensating as loose and supple as we can, so she can continue to use her compensation patterns. And does that make sense? Like her compensation patterns are starting to become a primary problem as well, because of how severe the issue is. And these are the kind of cases that you can go in and do extensive amounts of really, really great work without a lot of effort on your part as a therapist, but providing significant relief for the client, for the horse. Would you try to do any kind of like deeper tissue work? Would you try to sink deeper down through the layers, or would you work superficially?
I feel like you would start out superficially and see how she handles it and then possibly work your way down further.
You would really have to judge this as you worked and adjust as you work through the horse. And that goes back to us, talking about sorry, I lost my train of thought. I'm getting bombarded. My phone, I had it right next to me and it's going off like crazy. I'm so sorry. Can you please repeat that? Because I got distracted.
I just feel like you would start, very light at first and then just determine it as you go through whether she handles it well, or if she kind of pushes away from it, then you kind of
Yeah,
lighten
if
up a
she
little bit.
blocks you out, if she completely disconnects, if she just hangs her head and checks out, like all of those are signs that you need to back away from the pressure a little bit. But if she's open to that pressure, you can slowly increase pressure to her tolerance. The other thing to keep in mind is, if you've ever gone and gotten a massage, like I'll be honest, I got one this morning and she was working on me and I'm like, oh man, that feels so great. Could you get into that? Could you get around my scapula? Like I needed her to dig into my right shoulder, and she dug into it. It's like 6 hours later and I'm like, shit. She really dug into it. It was too much. It felt great at the time. So you still have to be the therapist and use your best judgment and read the body language and know, even if the client, the horse, is willing to accept more work, you have to know when to say, this is probably enough. Like I have some horses that will let me work on them for hours if I wanted to. Their bodies might want it, but they physically can't process that degree of change without discomfort. And our goal is to help and not harm, right? Discomfort and pain are two very different things. Staying within the threshold or under the threshold of discomfort while we're working is very different than somebody leaving a session and having discomfort or pain afterwards. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Any questions on this so far? Any questions about the horse that I can answer? And I know I don't have a visual. I'm going to pull it up really quick. Let's see. The vet is going to send me all of the x-rays so that we can take a look at that. Let's see. McKenna, sorry to bug you with this question, but do you happen to have any of the videos of Duke walking? I think I might have some on my phone. I'm gonna look really
I
quick.
sure do. I'm not sure if I have any from like original, like, but I can look back and also I can quick text Tootie as well.
I think I have all of them actually. I'm like pulling it up on my phone right now.
Okay. I
So
definitely have some like of him towards the end, and I have some of him right now. So
yeah, he's looking good right now.
he's
I'm
doing
gonna
us.
share this out. So this is when he's walking. Sorry, I have so many. This was a case that went on for a very long time. All right, so we'll start with this video. Whoops. Thought I just downloaded it. That's when he's doing pretty well.
I have some from March, and I have some from February. And I think I have some earlier ones too. Do you want me to text them to you or?
Oh, nope, I got the video that I wanted right
Okay,
here.
sounds
I found it.
Perfect.
So bear with me guys for just a second while I get it up here for you guys to see. How many of you have been exposed to a founder case? Have gotten to look and see what that looks like?
I've never seen one.
The old
Okay.
gelding that I have, he's on the verge of kind of teetering, which we've kind of got him on the good side now because we changed his diet and everything. But he was basically just
Okay.
really, really fat.
Yeah, that definitely has an impact too. Should be coming through my email here. It's telling me the file's too large. Okay, I'll tell you what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna drop it into the Facebook group. And we'll look at it right there. Sorry, this is taking so long. I should have had this ready. Okay, and she has given me permission to use his whole case study, so we do have that to utilize. Um, um, oh my goodness, come on. Trying to get me to download things. It's weird. Okay. I apologize. I was not as prepared as I wanted to be here. All right. All right, so that's posted and it's just the video. So let's pull that up and share screen. Still posting, so it's going to take a second. It's a big video. Almost done. Refresh it. Okay. Can you guys see this video? Let's see.
Yep.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Whoops. Don't know what that is. Um, so watch how he's walking. This is how this mare is walking, except honestly a little bit worse than what he's doing here because she's refusing to walk almost at all. He's obviously not too interested. And this is me talking in the background. I don't know how to mute that. Sorry. Oh, maybe right there. So you guys can see this, right?
Yep.
So watch the strain as he lifts up through the shoulders and the back. And how the drag of the foot. So you guys could see that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna let it keep, I don't know where this stuff is
Yeah.
coming from. But let me pause that video.
It's painful to watch.
It is, it's very painful to watch. So what do you think about looking at the body mechanics there with this horse that we unfortunately do not have video of? What do you think, watching Duke, who's moving very similar to her, what else would you recommend to help provide some comfort and relief for this horse? Or is there anything else that you can think of?
Could you do light PEMF in the hips?
You could do PMF as on anywhere of the body as long as you avoid the limbs. And that is only because she is also a cushienoid horse. If she wasn't cushienoid, you'd be doing PMF all over her feet and everything. What else do you guys think? So here's things that I would check for. I would be checking the bedding in the stall. And if it's not deep enough, I would make recommendations for deeper bedding. This particular horse, through a series of questions, we found that she would not lay down. And they were using the pellets, the pellets for bedding, which get dusty and they're wet and damp. And they're not very deep. However, her horse has a habit of eating shavings. So they have to come up with like, how do they get her to not eat shavings? Working with the vet, we came up with her deeply bedding the stall with shavings on the bottom and putting the pellet bedding after it had already been soaked on top of the shavings to discourage her from eating it. It has worked. She is laying down daily and getting back up. That we know. And we only know that because evidence of poop stains on her and things like that. She's a gray. It shows up really easy. So she's showing evidence that she's laying down. What else could you recommend between some body work sessions, or what would you potentially show your client to help them work with their horse between sessions?
Would this be a time where, I mean, you definitely make sure that they understand that this is going to be light sessions as tolerated over time, and that you're going to probably need to come up with a longevity type of plan versus a immediate solution. But looking at the horse and everything, would you want to make sure that they're doing things, and this isn't my expertise, but to like really engage their abdominals and top line if they're able to, like, to help and assist with that? Or like, would you try to figure out a way with the vet and their plan for like anything that they could do as far as stretching or anything like that in between, or what they can tolerate? I guess I don't get how,
Sure.
I don't know the severity or the vet plan or the farrier plan or
Yeah.
next steps either.
So the vet plan, and this is very common unless you have a situation like with Duke where the vets were out every other day and the family could afford to, to do that. Not all of your clients can afford that. So in that particular instance with this horse, the owner has sunk a lot of money into diagnostics and trying to figure this out. She's by far not broke. Like when the vet recommended, after doing the venograph, and the vet recommended doing the A2 injections, The client was like, well, how much are those? And the vet was like, they're 1,800. She's like, do it, do it, do it, do it. $1,800 to do injections. That's a lot. And so some of that, Candace, it depends on the client's financial ability, like what their resources are, what they can afford to do. Body work wise, this is a horse that once a week, if I was closer to them, they're a good hour away, I would go out and work on this horse about every 4 days if I was more local to them. Within the owner's budget, you are, like you said, you're doing work to the horse's tolerance. And when I worked on her, she tolerated about 30 minutes of work before you could just tell she was getting tired and sluggish and it was too much. It was sensory overload. So it wasn't that the work was too much. Her body is so taxed that she can't handle more than that. So a little bit of baby steps. Now, coming at that from a business perspective, does that mean that you charge less for your session and your time? No, because it's not like a human massage where someone's coming in and paying for a 60-minute massage or a 90-minute massage. They're paying for a session for what the horse needs the most. Sometimes those sessions are an hour and a half. Sometimes they're 30 minutes. I've had horses where they were like 15 minutes of just trying to let them touch me, and the horse like let me touch the horse, and the horse was such a hard no that was all we got done, was letting me get near them. And those were huge wins for the owner because the horse otherwise wasn't letting anyone get near it. So sometimes that's that's what a session looks like. And I personally don't charge my clients for a full session if that's what I run into, because I want them to call me back. I'm like, hey, it's not your horse's day. Tell you what, cover my travel time and we'll call it even. And then I'll come back in a week and we'll try again. So that's how I approach it with my clients. And everybody's going to run their business a little bit differently on how they do that. I used to not charge anything at all, and then realized that I was using my truck, my gas, and everything else, and not seeing other clients, that I had to do something to recover for having that appointment booked, even if I didn't get done what I wanted to do. But I don't have to hit them super hard in the wallet, if that makes sense. You're going to come across horses that your client's going to tell you, oh, this horse is a head shaker and doesn't want its ear touched. Well, guess where you have to work? You're going to have to get to the point where you can work up around the skull and around the ears to help relieve whatever is causing the pain, right? There are times then that you're spending 40 minutes just getting the horse to touch you and 15 minutes of actual work, or letting you touch the horse. Candace, have you run into that?
Yeah, especially with younger horses or horses that have never had any type of body work done. It takes a minute, and you can only do so much with them.
I find that ill-fitting bridles and riders with heavy hands, those horses, or horses off the track, any track horses, horses that had pullback injuries. One that I'm working with right now, he was ear twitched on the track a lot. So he can't stand his ears being touched, and he's huge. He's 17.3. And he can just go, nope. And I could stand on a stool and I still can't get to the top of his head. He can avoid me as much as he wants. You'll have horses like this little mare who, when she checks out, unlike a lot of other horses that just want to leave or start to show a lot of agitation, she just puts her head down and goes silent. She stops communicating. She stops moving at all. She stops turning an ear towards you. She doesn't want to participate. She has checked out. She's done. So being able to understand that body language within the horses is going to help you guys with these, with your clients as well. Help you determine when to end the session, when to continue the session. The hardest part, or it's not the hardest part, but a challenging part of this is figuring out when to stop. And Candace can probably tell you as well, we'll sit here and work on these horses, and the horse is willing, like we said earlier, but we have to have the foresight to say enough's enough. And I think this is a good place to stop. I got a lot accomplished today. Let's save the rest for the next time. And if you communicate well to your clients, they'll have massive respect for you.
Yeah,
Um,
there's been a few times where like I've just been like, they're done. And they're like, well, they're totally calm, they're totally fine. I'm like, yep, they're checking out. They're no longer telling me what they need or want. And
yeah,
I
and they
need
don't
to
know
stop.
that. They
Yeah.
don't get that. Candace, I know it might be putting you on the spot, and you are welcome to say that you don't want to deal with it, but you just recently had an educational moment with a client that was a super positive. Would you be willing to share that a little bit?
Yes, can you be more specific?
You texted me that you had a good day.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, so I had a client. Do you want the whole backstory, Chris?
What's that?
Do you want the whole backstory?
Summarized would be great.
Okay. So I got a text message from a client that I'd worked on their horse about a month ago, and they had seen some skin conditions popping up, and we had gone back and forth, just kind of um, trying to weave out what it was. And I ultimately just said, like, this is out of my scope of practice. I really need you to talk to your vet. And I think looking out for, with the help of Chris, looking out for signs of this or that, to be able to report it to your vet. And they ended up going to their vet, and because I said, I'm not going to work on your horse, I'm not going to do anything with it. I think this is really a time for a vet intervention. And they ended up messaging me back and just said, hey, I really appreciate your professionalism here. It was really nice that like, basically that I gave them some tools, the things to look out for is really helpful with the vet appointment. And it ended up um, just as a really positive experience that I was able to be like, nope, like, this is out of my scope of practice. This isn't what I'm doing. I'm not going to work on a horse right now. Like, you need to have that intervention. And yeah, it was a really nice text message to get, because I was honestly worried, like, oh my gosh, like, do you think, you right away go to like, are they going to accuse me of something? Like, I get a little worried, like, okay, how do I deal with this in the most professional way where I can help the client, but also stay within my scope of practice?
And the other part is, and those of you who have used massage therapists before, and Candace as well, it's very hard when you say no, because the person behind you will say yes, because they are not interested in the care of the horse. They're interested in being validated, being important, getting paid. Their motives are not in the best interest of the horse. When you put your motives in the best interest of the horse, even if you don't know, like if you had been out at the barn and came across this laminitic horse, which, full disclosure, was thrown on my schedule with no notice. Like, another horse came off because he had an injury, so we couldn't work on him. And the owner was like, oh, well, you're here and now you have time. Could you? And yeah, I could. I'm there. But I needed a lot of back information. So my first time with that horse, I referred them back to the vet. I'm like, I do not like the way these feet look. She looks worse than when I was here last time. Even though I had never touched her last time, I had seen her and observed her, and she had looked significantly worse. And I referred her back to the vet. The vet that she had used to put the shoes on with the farrier was like, oh, I really don't need to come out. Like, it's just taking her time to adjust. The vet was dismissive of her. So she was like, oh, my vet said, and I said, I understand that. Please get a second opinion. They called the other vet out. That vet was like, yeah, we need to do a venograph. We need to see if there's even blood flow coming to this left foot. And then they were able to do the injections. And she was able to have feedback from the vet on my therapies in addition to what the vet was already doing. And the vet validated what I thought. That provides you guys with an enormous amount of trust. I mean, I developed a lifelong client that day by just sticking to what I know and referring out and saying, it's not appropriate for me to do this today. Meanwhile, quite frankly, literally, there was a PMF practitioner in there who, the day before, I wasn't there, I was told about this, so it's hearsay. But the day before was like, oh, if she's laminitic, I can pulse her feet. I could do that for you. And the owner was smart enough at this stage to say, no, I think I need to wait for the vet. And it was completely contraindicated because of her Cushing's. And so you're going to have those people who will come in behind you. And if they decide to listen to the person who's willing to do whatever to get paid, they're not your client. I mean, maybe they are, maybe that's the client base that you look for, but those are the people that I'm like, you know what? You go do you. I got people, I don't need it. And it took me a long time to get to that point. That I didn't start off saying, go away. I started off with trying to be, working at 10 p.m. if that's what they needed, whatever had to be done to get my business going. But don't compromise your scope of practice. Don't compromise your ethics and your morals for the sake of getting a check. You will lose clients. And I know we kind of went off on a little tangent here, but any questions, any concerns you guys think you might run into, scenarios you want to run by?
I have a question, or just wondering, with this particular horse and the laminitis and everything and Cushing's, what would you do, if anything, or suggestions of anything in regards to the weather? Because our weather is going to be heading into, we're going to have some severe cold coming event, bound to happen. Weather
Yeah,
doesn't.
Nah, they
No.
can, a horse's ideal temperature, according to the vet groups and like the AAEP and the AAVSB and all of these veterinary groups, a horse's ideal temperature based on research is between 60 and 40 degrees. So for this laminitic case, the more snow we get, the better it is for her legs.
Okay.
So the only way that she could get cold therapy is if the cold was constant and not going below freezing to underneath the skin. Her hair coat will protect her. We've got a whole group of people who live up in Wisconsin and we get negative, pretty significant sub-zero temps, and these horses go out just fine and play in the snow and walk around and their legs are fine. So even the ambient temperature of the air being cold is a benefit to her. However, like cryotherapy, we don't get constant cold. Once we remove the gas, the body temperature starts to increase and we vasodilate. Same thing if you're using like cold water immersion. As soon as you come out of that cold water immersion, you're dealing with vasodilation. That vasodilation is what puts her at more risk of us making it worse. So unless that cold is constantly applied and it's not cold enough to be a numbing effect, that's the ideal therapy for her. But how do you constantly ice a horse's legs? Stick them in the snow. So for her, the snow is going to be to her benefit.
Okay.
Do you worry then about her feet getting too wet?
That is a concern.
Okay.
Her hoof capsules are still all intact. So the biggest risk would be thrush. She's got pads and everything and like whatever that gel-like substance, not the stuff that gets hard, but the cushy, can't remember what it's called, the cushy, purpley colored foam. And so they've tried to seal around the frog as best they can to help prevent that. But quite honestly, thrush is the least of their problems, and they can treat thrush daily with medication and just injecting, like using a syringe and getting things down into the, my anatomy failing me today. End of the day, I guess. But they can put stuff to dry out in between there, but they can't use rubbing alcohol, because what do we use rubbing? What's one thing we use rubbing alcohol to remove? Glue.
Blue.
And she's got glue on shoes. So she can't have glue or rubbing alcohol. And those foot soaks would cause vasodilation. I don't think that the thrush factor is anything to be too concerned about. And the vet doesn't think so at this point.
Okay, thanks.
What else have you guys got? Throw it at me.
What's the current plan with the farrier?
Good question. So the farrier came back out after the vet was there and did the venograph and the injection and moved the shoe back to give her a little bit more support. Again, I haven't heard if the horse is more comfortable now or not. I'm not sure. I haven't heard back from her yet. The plan with the farrier is to come out and check her feet I think he said every 10 days, I think. And just to check, but she also has to have the vet come out and do x-rays every week right now, because the rotation in the left front continues to get worse despite everything that they're doing. But the vet does feel like there's hope for her if we can get past this. And for some reason, Colorado and laminitis in the fall and winter go together. There's a lot of cases right now. I don't know, Michelle, were you experiencing that where you were boarding when you lived here? And Diane, I'm seeing so much of it.
Say that again.
The founder in Colorado in the winter, like in the onset of winter.
No,
Not
no, no.
Not really.
No. Yeah, there's a lot of it this year, and they don't know why. I didn't remember this the last couple of years. But to backtrack and circle back to what we're doing. So with this particular horse, your case notes of like documenting the horse's comfort level, being very specific, you're going to be less focused on releasing, like working through knots and things like that, as you are on working on softening tissue and creating comfort and keeping the circulatory system feeding the muscles to the best we can. So you're working fairly lightly, and your strokes would be effleurage type strokes with not too much kneading. You would use quite a bit of compression in this type of case, and very light cross fiber friction where you do come across knots or ropey tissue. But most of it, there's going to be a lot of holding. And we haven't talked a lot about holding, but holding is where you're placing your hands over, and the heat from your hands combined with the energy of your intention helps to soften tissue. You're waiting the horse out to take a sigh, to take a deep breath, to change their breathing pattern, maybe to change their posture, or just, they're letting down, so to speak. So you can use quite a bit of holding through there that can provide quite a bit of comfort. But you would avoid a lot of the deeper type of strokes. Even if you're working deeper tissue, you're going to stick with like an effleurage stroke, compression and holding primarily, with a little bit of cross fiber friction on superficial layers. And you're going to have to be careful around some of the big lymph node pockets, like in the flank and in the groin, in front of the base of the neck, in front of the scapula. So you want to be careful for some of the big lymph node pockets that are feeding and flushing out what's coming up from the legs. We do want them to be open to draw fluid away and inflammation away from the feet, but we still have to be a little careful that we're not encouraging. It's such a catch-22, right? Because we need to encourage the blood flow to get the inflammation out, but we can't encourage too much blood flow in a cushingoid horse when we have a complication with like sugar. So the horse that we saw in the video with Duke, Duke is not a cushienoid horse. He became laminitic and foundered due to a toxic weed. It just took a really long time for it to clear his system. I think it took almost, I think, if my memory serves me right, I think it was about 4 months before he was comfortably going on some walks up and down the aisle. And he laid down 90% of his time for 2 months straight before he was willing to stand regularly, like for more than just get a bite to eat, drink some water, and pee and poop. And McKenna can probably attest to that. This horse did not walk for nearly 2 months. And he was getting cryotherapy and PMF while he was laying down. Like I cryoed his feet and he never even got up. He just sat there and I cryoed his feet while he laid on the ground. So significant amount of pain. In the videos you saw, he was on his way to recovery. This horse that we're looking at, I'll be very honest, I personally am not, I don't have a lot of high hopes for her. Her degree of rotation on the left front is at 20 degrees. Once you get into like the 20-degree change, her comfort level is going to be really, really hard to maintain. Really hard to maintain. What are one of the options? She could call an Esco buff and just remove the coffin bone, but does that solve that? Not really. That would solve a navicular case. It's not going to solve a founder case. But it's an option to try. If her outcome doesn't change, she could certainly try that and see what happens because she has nothing to lose, right? So, those are tough conversations that are a little bit outside of our scope of practice. But you will have clients that will call you and they're going to say, my vet will not, they won't tell me what they think. Can you walk through this with me? I just did this last week on a consult. They want to do all these surgeries on this horse and they're telling her that they'll do the surgeries and maybe it will get a little bit better for a short period of time, but it will reoccur. The horse is very uncomfortable. It has a lot of other comorbidities. The surgery is going to cost thousands and thousands of dollars, and the recovery time is long, and the prognosis is very, very uncertain. Do you make that investment? Not our call, right? But we can walk a client through them coming to their own conclusion by asking questions and not providing the answers for them. So you'll be faced with that as well. And Candace, have you come across that kind of situation? Daryl, I'm sure you have in training where you've had to talk to clients and be like, look, it's time.
Yeah, it's always uncomfortable.
It
And
sucks.
yeah, and sometimes you have to wait until they really want to hear it, because if they don't want to hear it, they're just going to go to the next person and wait till they find someone that tells them what they want to hear. So like,
Yep.
it's tricky. Yeah, it's tricky.
And you have to, so in this profession, in my opinion, you have to become really good at reading people and reading the horses. You have to become really good at understanding how to read between the lines and not just go with what people are saying, but listen more to the actions, the tone, and the body language. Because somebody will tell you, yeah, I want to hear it, and they're not open to it. We were watching Tom Segura last night. Sorry to make that reference, but we were watching Tom Segura last night, and I think we were watching Disgraceful, which is one of his comedy shows. And he talked about how he lost a bunch of weight. And he goes, I get people all the time asking me, hey, could you coach me through losing weight? And he goes, no. And then and they're like, why not? And he goes, do you look in the mirror and go, I hate you to yourself? And if you don't, you're not ready. It goes right to this. People make changes for two reasons. And believe it or not, these are the only two things that make people change something. Pain and fear. Think on it for a second. Let me know if you agree. So even when you're making a change for your business, why would you make the change? You're excited, but what's forcing you to take that next step?
You're
Fear of
afraid of
failure.
not, yeah, or afraid of not making money.
Right? So it's all fear-based. So fear of not making enough money, fear, what, Brandy, what was yours?
Failure.
Fear of
Think that's
failure.
right.
For me, I don't feel accomplished if I'm not moving forward. So I have a fear of like not being accomplished. But it's fear. And the other thing is pain. And so people, like, if you take somebody who refuses to go to the doctor, they'll go when the pain gets bad enough. And the thing that we have to keep in mind when it comes to the horses is their whole genetic primal makeup is to not show pain. They cannot show it, because if they show it, then they become prey. So if we are seeing it, how bad do you think they're feeling it? It's got, yeah, so the horse either trusts you significantly to be vulnerable in front of you, or they're incapable of hiding it anymore. So if we can become really great at reading that body language, we can remove so much of that discomfort before it becomes clinically significant and they end up with a giant vet bill and getting all kinds of procedures and diagnostics done. We have so much at our in our toolbox, guys, like so much. What other questions do you guys have? We have about 5 minutes before I let you go.
I don't have a question necessarily, but I really liked when you told us how you would deal with if you went to see a client and you could only like work on 15 minutes of just touching the horse, because
Yeah.
those are situations that we're all going to run into and like feel bad charging, but then, right?
I mean,
I liked your
like,
explanation.
I try not to, I won't charge. And I mean, I'll be honest, full disclosure, if the person's a total jackass, I'll charge them the full appointment. And I have one of those. So this was an example. Diane can attest to this. Last Wednesday, our highs were in the 20s. We were getting snow. It wasn't a significant amount of snow, but we had rain before that. So the roads were really slippery and slick. And this was an unheated open barn. And the owner was like, but my horses need you. It's urgent. And I said, we have no heat. We have no shelter to speak of from the snow and the wind. And you live an hour away from your barn, and I live on a very windy, up and down, steep. Like, for me to get there, I have to drive down some pretty steep grades. I'm not doing that on the edges of ravines in a snowstorm. I mean, like, so I rescheduled her for tomorrow. She pressured me repeatedly, going, oh, but like, we could still do it. Oh, but my horse needs you. Oh, but my horse needs you. Here's my answer to that. If it is a dire emergency for massage, you need to call your vet. Massage should never be emergent. It just shouldn't. I mean, we have other therapies that maybe could go into that, but massage should not be emergent. Two, she posted pictures on social media with icicles coming off of her horse's face and was laughing about it and still expected me to go out there. Her horse had icicles hanging from his face, like out of his nostrils, icicles. And she was perfectly okay with putting me at risk with my bare hands to go out there and work in the freezing cold. We also have to take care of ourselves. My hands are my tools. I have a little cut right here, tiny little cut. I was like, oh, paper cut on my hand, my hands, my hands. I have treated this stupid little paper cut so bad because I do not want it to get, these are my tools. I take very good care of my hands. You have the right to say no and guard yourself and have self-preservation for yourself. And here's the other thing. cold, snowy. The horse has a shelter in its pasture, but the barn is pretty open. How much, and this horse is clipped, so he's like triple blanketed in those, he's full body clipped. So triple blanketed. Where do you think that horse's energy is going if I'm out there doing a massage?
Conserve body heat.
Conserve body heat. So is he getting much of a benefit from the massage? No. I could have gone out there, and she has 2 horses. I could have made some money that day and gone back again this week because the horse wouldn't have held the work. That's not me. That's not how I want to run my business. Everybody has every right to do what they want to do. I would not have felt good about going out there, even if even if I wasn't worried about my hands being frozen and frostbite. I would have felt really bad if I went out to work on a horse knowing that they would not hold whatever work I did because they're going to spend their next couple days trying to conserve their body heat. And when we try to conserve body heat, what happens to our tissue?
It tenses.
It tenses up.
It tenses up. It's completely counterproductive. That being said, I worked in Wisconsin for 10 years or for 8 years, and I worked on horses year round. But I was usually in a sheltered barn. Horses were kept in a stall afterwards. They weren't just chucked right back outside. So there's a lot of things that we can talk through with our clients. This woman didn't want to hear anything except, I want you to come out this day. She didn't want to hear anything. So you can bet your butt that tomorrow I'm charging her for everything that I do. And she is welcome to find someone else if she doesn't like it. I don't like being bullied. And I want business, but I'm not going to sacrifice myself to get it. So I hope that helps a little bit too. You don't have to, I'm polite to her. I'm kind to her. I'm going to go out tomorrow and do my very best on that horse, but I am going to charge her for every little thing I do. And if her horse can't handle more than 15 minutes, so be it. And maybe that's not ethically okay. You guys are welcome to say, well, Chris, that's pretty shitty. I will take it and listen to it and, process through it. But I don't like being bullied. And this woman, she was less interested in the well-being of her horse than she was in just getting what she wanted, which was to get the horse worked on the day that was originally scheduled because she felt her horse really needed it urgently. If you are in that dire of a situation, call your vet. They take emergency calls. I don't. You can. If you want to go that route, I will help you set it up. But for me, no, thanks. I'm too old. I'm just getting too tired. But I'm going to stop recording.